Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Inspirate Business, the show that's here to inspire you, to empower you, and to enlighten you. And today I have someone very special, very dear to me on our red hot couch. Welcome to the Inspirate Business show, Mpafane Deyi. I want to just put a rider. Mpafane and I encountered each other about maybe 5-6 years ago, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I was afforded an opportunity to work with Mpafane on a project, a very exciting project, a water management project for the National Department of Public Works in Pretoria. And we worked together. And, what came across very strongly for me working with Mpafane is, firstly, number one, his unbelievable competencies, his knowledge in the water management infrastructure space. And obviously digging a bit deeper, me prying a little bit as I do, found out there's a beautiful backstory to Mpafane's life. So we're going to go through the next hour trying to unravel this and look at, our country is faced with a dire situation, water being a national asset, a strategic asset. We are quite challenged in Mpafane.
Mm.
But firstly, welcome to the Inspirate Business Show.
All right. Thank you, Yusuf, for inviting me, and greetings to the viewers.
No, well, so tell us a little bit. You are a Xhosa boy hailing from the Eastern Cape, right? Tell us a little bit about your story. Where did you grow up? Which part of the Eastern Cape? The Eastern Cape first is the most beautiful province, right? So tell us a little bit about that lifestyle of yours, where you grew up. And I know it was a rural village in the mountains somewhere. I know when you told me the story, I pictured it.
Yeah. Thank you, Yusuf, for that. I am from Eastern Cape. I was born in Mthatha, but I grew up in Butterworth, in a township called Umsobomvu. And at some point, I found myself in a rural village in Ngamakwe, which was a change of a scene.
Mm.
And I remember the first day I went to school. I was the only one wearing shoes.
Mm.
And I thought, no, this can't be right. Following day, I had to take off my shoes and be like other children and experience what they experience. And it was a quite remote village. Even today, you don't have good reception in that particular village. There is a big river, passing in the village, but people don't have water supply, piped water, and they still fetch water from the springs and also from the river.
Mm.
And I had to learn how to look after the cattle and learn that discipline. You wake up in the morning, you have a responsibility to milk the cow before you go to school, and you must release the cattle to go. And after that, you start to get on with your day. After school, you have a responsibility to go and fetch the cattle and the sheep from the field.
Mm.
And so that culture of discipline and of when you wake up in the morning, you've got activities. I think it played a very, very important role in my life. That it's a discipline I still maintain today in everything that I do.
And this was for how many years did you do this? This was, I guess, from grade 1, right? Right through.
No, it was actually from grade. Now we have grades. I think it was from grade 4.
That's standard 2. Yeah.
Yes, standard 2, and then. And when it was time for me to do standard 5, then I came back in the township.
Okay.
You must remember, in the village, you were taught all the languages in Xhosa, all the subjects in school in Xhosa. You taught mathematics in Xhosa. You taught geography in Xhosa, history in Xhosa. Now I come back to the township Now there are certain subjects that are taught in English, which was confusing for me and frustrating because, in the village, they made it easy, and then you'll be taught everything in Xhosa. And I think that's when my life became really difficult, because at that time, my parents were in separation, so I was staying with my dad. So we would drive from the village, another village now, and he'll drop me off at school. He goes to work. Then from school, I walk with other boys to a certain shopping center. I wait for him. Then he comes from work, picks me up, back to the village. Now there's this one day, I did the usual. I waited for him. 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. The old man is not coming. 6 o'clock, the old man is not coming. I remember an old lady who was selling fruits. She said to me, "My child, I'm not leaving you here today because I know your dad always picks you up. Something must have happened." I said, "No, you're not going to take me. I'm going to wait for my dad." He never came. Instead, a certain gentleman came. He introduces himself as my cousin, which is someone I've never met before. And he said, "From today, you're going to live with me. Your dad has been arrested, is in jail." Now, this gentleman was struggling, in his life, trying to make means and meet. And he was staying in a hostel. Now, from a comfort of a home into a hostel, he is sharing with other people. His small business that he was running was selling alcohol. And he was never prepared for this. So I get there is no bed for me. So I spent the first night sleeping on cardboards. And I mean, the only thing he could do for me was just to provide shelter. I don't have clothes to change because this happened like this, and tomorrow I must go to school. Now life changed. No provision, no money for lunch. Now no car to take me to school. I must walk every day. And I did that for, I think for a year. And now in school one day, it's hot. The teacher says, "Kids, please take off your jerseys." Now I couldn't take off my jersey because my shirt was so short. I was basically wearing a collar underneath. And she insisted that all of us, we take off. So I had to respect the teacher. I took off my jersey. And I was embarrassed, obviously, because I had stomach out. But that is a day that, as painful as it was, because I was embarrassed, my dignity, I felt like today it's on the floor. Everyone, kids at a high school was laughing at
that
me
age.
at that age. So I asked myself, what am I going to do to restore my dignity? And I thought, first, I need to work hard on my studies. I must find a way to change the situation. So after school, every day I would go sell alcohol in the hostel I was staying in. So one day I thought, no, I must start my own business. I borrowed 5 rands. After school, went straight, I ran to town, bought a packet of sweets. That was my first business. I was 13 years old. Started selling sweets. From 1 packet of sweets to 2 packets of sweets. Bought a camera, taking pictures in school. Then every day, running back to the hostel, I'll go to a pep store, put 2 rands, lay by clothes, lay by uniform, And they never discouraged me because, I mean, that was small money. Sometimes I just drop off 50 cents. But they never. I had an account. That's how I managed to buy my own uniform. I learned independence. And it was tough. And it was so obvious. I was not aware that even other people can see this until I was stopped by a policeman I would meet every time I walked to school. He stopped me. He said, "Young man, I see your pain. Never quit school." So those words carried me because I knew my liberation will come from education.
Your education. Wow. That was quite a remarkable story. I think, I don't know if you could feel it. I just sitting in the studio, I've had goosebumps, even shed a slight tear as well that I had to hold back. I mean, I know you, Mpafane, but I didn't know the story. And, this is what life is about. And what we're trying to achieve with the show as well, is that here is somebody, what comes out very strongly for me, somebody that has been through a real tough hardship. I mean, who would have thought that you wouldn't have had that father to come and look after you? And you then needed to fend for yourself. And boy, has he fended for himself. Because let's, after the break, explore where this journey then took Mpafane. And let me tell you, it's a real exciting journey. So let's discuss that after the break. Welcome back to Inspirate Business. And on our hot couch, we have been truly touched by a remarkable story of this young man, very dapper, on this couch of ours. We call it the red hot couch. And there's been many people that are here on this couch that have shared their stories, and Mpafane has shared his vulnerable story, growing up in real hardship and having to fend for himself. At the age of 13, starting entrepreneurship, selling sweets, he couldn't afford school uniform. And what did he do? He made a bit of money, then put down money on lay-by, and that's how he was able to fend for himself. So this happens for quite a few years. You're living with an uncle that you didn't know. Your dad is in prison, and you're living in a hostel, but you end up matriculating. The message you got from a policeman was, education is key. I think that was a powerful message. Education is key. So you focused on wanting to educate yourself. And you have really educated yourself. So tell us about this educational journey. You then matriculate in the Eastern Cape.
Yes. Thanks, Yusuf, for that question. So, yes, I continue to provide for myself. I think when I was doing Standard 9, which is now called Grade 11, then my dad got out of jail, and they reconciled with my mother. But at that time, I was already independent, doing my own things, and I was actually happy, that I can make things happen for myself. So then I went to do my undergrad.
That you did in Cape Town?
No, that was in Natal.
Okay.
Did civil engineering, graduated. I started working.
So how did you, how did you fund the undergrad?
All right. So the undergrad was also another challenging one, because my dad passed on when I was doing my matric. I was, I think, 16. So he passed on when I was 16. And then when I was 17, that's when I started tertiary. And my mom was a nurse, so she could only afford to send me 500 bucks. In that 500 bucks, I must buy food, pay rent, buy a phone card, but I didn't have a cell phone. And so when I looked at this, I lived in Phoenix, in Durban.
Yes.
So now to get a bus to town and back. So when I did my budget, no man, this cannot work out. So I had to choose which days do I go to school. So I would take a bus on Monday, going to Durban, and not come back. At Natal, below the library, there was a place called the basement where students can study and you're allowed to make noise and stuff like that. And then in the library, it's quiet, obviously. So after school, I would stay in the library. Then when they close at 9 o'clock, I go in the basement, pretending to be going there to study. But I would sleep in the basement. And in the morning, go to the toilet, take a shower. Not a shower, just my face, important things. And go to class. That's how I acquired a nickname called Student Cut. Because I would wear the same clothes. I would only wash my face. So they said, you only do your student cut. And
that's cute, eh?
And in terms of diet, I thought, what's the cheapest meal I can get to survive these days? So I would buy 6 apples, one for morning, one for lunch, one for evening. And Wednesday, I go back to Phoenix, come back on Thursday, stay in campus, then I'll return on Friday after school. So that was a journey, and I could not bother my mother because I knew the situation at home. And now civil engineering is a demanding career, a degree.
Yes.
So there was no time. Other people studying other courses, they would work in a restaurant and do these other things. So it was no longer possible for me to do any sort of entrepreneurship or do business because I had to focus on this.
Engineering is tough. I memean, your lectures are like right through all day. Yeah.
And now I could not even have like proper friends because I'm not able to change clothes and nice sneakers, and I don't have those things. I focused on my studies. Those words of that policeman: focus on your education to liberate you. And when they publish results, they would not put names, so they would put student numbers. And now people were looking at this student number and the surname, and people didn't know my name, didn't know my surname. I'm like, who's this Deyi? This must be an Indian guy. He's doing so well. And they learned later, I think 2 years, I'm actually a Xhosa boy, and so on. And then they started calling me Dr. Deyi from second year. Then, so long story short, I finished and graduated. I started working.
So there you did your civil engineering. Right, okay.
Then I started working. After 2 years of working, I was watching. Oh, and then I still have this bag of entrepreneurship. I started selling airtime in the office. So guys, don't go out to buy airtime, buy from me. So I had a little safe in my office where I keep all the cash. It was good business. Then one day I'm watching a TV. They're talking about Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy is broke. He can't afford bodyguards. And the presenter said, and you, my friend at home, how far are you from bankruptcy? That time I'm driving a GTI. I have a job. I'm an engineer. Then I went to bed. That question challenged me. How far am I to bankruptcy? And then I realized I'm probably 2 months away. I called my mother. Why are you still working at your age? No, because I've got to provide. You're close to retirement and you're still working. This life I don't want. Went to my boss. I told him I have to quit because I'm only 2 months away to bankruptcy. I want to start a business. I want to be financial independent. I would never give that advice to a young man because I just left work. Now then the banks were calling me, no, come take your asset. And I'm no longer interested. I'm starting my life. I'm running a business. Then months later, I ran out of reserves because I thought in business you just get in and you get a project and you work. And things did not work out like that, which was a tough reality for me. Then the landlord where I was staying, now I'd moved to East London, where I was staying, said, young man, you can't pay your rent. I said, yes, Charlene, I can't afford to pay the rent because I've started a business. But you know what? The day I make money, I'll pay rent for the whole year. And she allowed me to stay. I lived in a dark flat, no electricity, nothing in the fridge because there is no power. And so continued to live here. It was on the first floor of my flat. Now, one day, my neighbor caught me knocking in my flat. And she asked, do you now have a girlfriend? Why are you knocking? I've never seen anybody. I said to her, no, I have to knock because I don't think I belong here. In case there's somebody else in my apartment, I belong somewhere else. I don't belong to stay in a flat. I'm an entrepreneur. She laughed. Then I got my first gig. I went to Charlene. I said, Charlene, I've made money. I'm willing to pay rent for the entire year. She started crying. I said, no, what's wrong? You're supposed to be happy. And she said, you know what? I could have lost my job. I'm not the landlord. I'm just a secretary here. But when you came, when I was chasing you over the phone and you came to my office and said, look, I'll pay your rent when I have money, I believed your story. At the back of that, I allowed you to stay. I'm happy for you. Then I was able to make money. And then I thought, I still have to commit in my desire of furthering my studies and invest in education.
So you went on and you did then your master's.
Yes.
Right? And you did that through an international university.
Yes.
In Holland.
In Holland.
Where you then did your master's in municipal water infrastructure. Now, what is very interesting is that, I mean, it's probably very expensive to get into that university. How was that funded?
So, because I was committed to invest in myself, and at the time I was reading a lot of Chinese books, they were talking about building cash reserves. I was so obsessed in building up cash, saving money. I didn't want to spend. I still continued to live in that bachelor flat and continue to build cash reserves. And my goal at the time was to be a millionaire in any currency. So I believe this can only happen if I build cash reserves. Then I came across this program. Then I applied in Holland, in Delft, to do a master's in municipal water infrastructure, specializing in water supply engineering. And then they asked me, do you have a bursary? I said, no, I don't have a bursary. I'll pay my own fees. They said, we don't believe you. Can you put down 600,000 up front? I did so. I paid the 600,000.
Now, you were able to do that. Everybody else around the world was sponsored.
Yes.
Here comes the student from Africa who's supposed to be the donor student. And you pay for it yourself, 600,000 for your masters. Now, you got that 600,000 through a project that I believe you did a project whilst you were studying, and you got a project for some water management solution for the Western Cape government. Something of that sort.
No, that one was still, that happened later when I was doing my PhD. So I made this money, paid the deposit, and go to Holland, continue to pay for my stay there. and so on. There were only two of us that were not funded by all these funders, United Nations and all these.
So US students were all funded, and here comes the African guy from the Eastern Cape, and he pays for his own study.
Pay for my own
fees. What a story that.
And people could not believe. They thought I'm from a rich family. I said, no, I am not from a rich family. And there was a lady from Canada who was from a very rich family, and the father was paying for her studies. So there were only two of us in campus. And
okay, so sorry, are we gonna? We already come to the end of this segment. Mpafane Deyi has been sharing his story, and what a story it's been. What a story. He's breaking paradigms in many ways. I find that intriguing that here you go to an international university and they all expect the African student to be like funded or donor funded, and he pays for it and drops 600 grand to do his master's because of a policeman in his darkest hour that told him education is the key to your liberation. What a powerful message in that. Immediately after the break, let's explore Mpafane Deyi's journey further. And by the way, this is a Deyi who's a Xhosa boy, not an Indian boy who they thought he was. Immediately after the break, we'll explore further. Welcome back to Inspirate Business, the show that's here to inspire you, to empower you, and to enlighten you. And on our hot couch, we have none other than Mpafane Deyi, who has shared with us his story in using education as a key to his emancipation, to his success. And here comes somebody that lived in poverty, in a very struggled environment, not having, parents that were there to fend for him. He had to fend for himself, learns entrepreneurship at the age of 13, selling sweets, then going, paying for his own master's in Holland. And you now become a specialist in water management with your master's. You then come back to South Africa with all this international experience, and you now want to offer these services to South Africa. This in itself has been a tremendous journey, culminating in also where we are right now with this water crisis. So let's discuss a little bit about what exactly you're doing at the moment in this water management space, infrastructure space. What are the challenges? What have been some of the successes? Maybe also, right as we sit here, I know some of the key metros are having problem with water management. I know we having worked together, have experienced some of the challenges as well with these, what they call the green drop and blue drop reports. So you come back from Holland and you get involved in the consulting space.
Yes. So I come back from Holland, and first of all, they didn't want to let me go. They wanted me to continue to do PhD. And I wanted to come back in my country. And then they said, look, we will not allow you. Even if you go to your country, you need to register for a PhD. And my master's certificate is written automatic admission anywhere in the world without an interview for a PhD. So I enrolled for a PhD at UCT, looking at pressure and leakage relationship in water distribution systems. What is currently happening in our country, whatever is produced from a water treatment plant to be supplied to consumers, we lose about 38%. I think the number was around there. So which translates to 9 billion rands per annum.
From all the Munichs.
For all the municipalities across the country, which is a lot of money. It's a lot of volume of water that is we must remember the water cycle. You pump water from a river or a borehole, that you use energy, you use money to do that, or by gravity, then you treat it. That's cost, chemicals, human resources involved, energy cost. Now, when you distribute it, again, you pump energy only to lose 9 billion rands into the system. So that's why I was interested in looking at that particular topic, pressure and leakage relationship in water distribution systems. And I was still funding my own studies. Then my supervisor moved to New Zealand. Then I could no longer finish that topic. Then I worked on a different topic, with another professor who's an applied mathematician, leading African scholar in Africa, is in the top 1% in the world. And we worked on a contamination problem, contamination transport in groundwater. Because the pollution we see from wastewater into our water bodies, it infiltrates and ends up contaminating our groundwater. And which was a successful PhD. After I finished, we managed to publish 4 textbook chapters. Now the textbook is used internationally. So, and that's when I began to accept when people say, no, I'm an expert, at least. I'm an independent researcher, and I think I know what I'm doing.
They talk about the 10,000 hours. You've got that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Now back into business. So we run a consulting engineering business, and successfully. But what we observed is that the government does not have money. If we have a maintenance backlog in South Africa of about 380 billion rands, maintenance backlog of the already
maintenance.
That's maintenance. We're not talking new infrastructure. We have maintenance backlog.
And this is all across, right? Not only water.
Across. No, water.
Only water.
No, water. Close to 400 billion. That's the deficit we have in the country. Maintenance backlog to maintain the existing infrastructure. And secondly, we still have people who are not served with water and sanitation in rural areas. Now, our government can never have enough money to be able to fund these programs. But what we know and understand is that the private sector is willing and ready to plant money into infrastructure. And water and sanitation infrastructure is a defensive asset because there will always be a need for it. There will always be a demand. We need to drink water. We need to take care of wastewater. So as a result now, the asset managers in South Africa are looking at that space of infrastructure finance. The days of focusing only on listed stocks and you invest there, now there's a great interest and a wave that is coming. Insurance companies are looking at infrastructure to invest in infrastructure. So we've set up an infrastructure finance company. We have the technical know-how to what is required and to assist in our infrastructure.
Is it done through a PPP? Because is it done in conjunction with government as also a stakeholder?
Yes.
Right.
So that's the thinking. But more and more, we are seeing people investing money and producing their own water.
So it's a privatization
of water. So in no time, if our government is slow, the private sector is going to stand up and say, we've got the expertise to build this infrastructure, we fix it, and we're going to run it and supply water to the individuals.
So that is something where there's a huge challenge in our country. You've seen the opportunity and coming up with an innovative solution around that through this structure that attracts then the funding. Obviously, it needs to have the right expertise. And this is where you come in with that expertise that you've gained and with others, right, within your team. And how is, where are you in the whole process?
So I recently attended a conference which was organized by one of the asset managers. and that conference was focusing on infrastructure. So pension funds were there, and also insurance companies, in particular Momentum, and companies that are already implementing projects on energy, renewable energy, were also there. And I was told that in beginning of the year next year, there's a regulation that is going to be updated by National Treasury, wherein now asset managers will be encouraged to invest on infrastructure. They'll be allowed. If you take pensions money and you can't just throw it anyway. But we've learned even if you throw it in the JSE, things can go wrong. We've seen it, what happened with some of the companies. So I think from next year, we're going to see a lot of money being deployed on water and sanitation infrastructure and other asset classes in South Africa going forward. So
that's an exciting.
Space.
I know government has been focused a lot around this tapping into this private sector funding, and I know one thing that's very strong that's come across is that the private sector, as you mentioned, is very willing to want to invest. Therein lies again a very positive spin to the challenges we're facing in this country. And a lot of the dooms or the naysayers, which talk about, and it's relevant, which is that there can be a social unrest, and because people are not being served with basic services 28 years into democracy, there will be this revolt. But I do believe, and this is something that Mpafane is tapped into, which is this galvanizing of the various stakeholders toward providing a basic service such as water, but such an important. Even from an Islamic perspective, water is actually such an important, what they call a gift from our Creator, an amana, because of its very nature. So we've come to the end of this segment. After the break, I want to explore a little bit further into and in some parting words with the challenges that we face. And there's a lot of frustration. But what are the things that we can be doing differently to be able to create this South Africa which is there to serve its people? And I know, Mpafane, you are very passionate about that. You've always been that way. So let's explore that after the break. Welcome back to Inspirate Business on our Red Hot Couch, sponsored by Aza Collective out in Kramerville. We've been hearing the fiery story of Mpafane Deyi, a story that hailed from the Eastern Cape rural village where he was once upon a time, his dignity was taken away from him when he couldn't afford a shirt on him, where he camouflaged it with a jersey. The teacher, it was too hot, so the teacher asked them to take off their jerseys. He was too embarrassed to take it off because he had a shirt that exposed his tummy. He vowed at that point to never be embarrassed like that, and used education as a key tool to emancipate him and to liberate him. And today he sits here as a successful entrepreneur involved in various aspects of serving this country so passionately through business. A water management specialist. I know I've worked with him, a subject area expert, but more importantly, passionately wanting to serve our people, that up to today, an indictment on us, that 28 years, even in the village where he hailed from, they still have to travel and carry buckets from the river for basic water. That needs to change. If we put a crystal ball now for the next 10 years, and this is where I want us to go to, what are the possibilities for South Africa? There are a lot of naysayers that are talking now that we are a failed state. I'd like to think we're not. Yes, we also have to put on a realistic hat. There are many, many, many challenges that we face. But Mpafane, where do you see South Africa, and what do we need to be doing differently to get us to be, this potential that I believe inherently we have?
I think first of all they need to be we need to be intentional about investing, number one, in state capacity. And back in the day, each and every town there will be a reputable city engineer who's experienced and who understand things. But nowadays you do find people who are who recently graduated, and they are made to be responsible for big programs. And in the mix of that, there's corruption, and which is basically eroding the state capacity. So I think we need to be intentional as a country and first invest in building that state capacity. Whether we have a program where we want to know, we want to produce solid engineers that will end up servicing municipalities, government departments, and we allow them to do engineering work. And we train managers that are responsible to run institutions. We have credible people who are able to run. We invest on leadership, and we have great leaders who are committed to our country and to see things change. I think for me that's the first thing, because yes, the state is pumping in money into projects. Projects are not getting done and they're not getting completed. The money is wasted and we don't get to achieve things. So I think if we can start with investing and building state capacity, and so that we make sure within public works, you remember when we got in there were no water professionals, adequate water professionals. And through our stay in public works, we were able to recruit. There was 32 young professionals who were trained by Rainwater, which we were able to absorb into the department to be able to execute projects. And it was for the first time that there was a massive program like that. And in other provinces, about 90, in Eastern Cape, 97 people were employed by Amatola Water through the program that we're running, because there was just no capacity to be able to execute things. And we see some of our clients are municipalities, and there is no capacity. People who really understand things. Consultants are running municipalities, technical programs in municipalities, because there is no capacity. So if we can start as a country, we invest in that, then and then we'll roll out the programs. You've mentioned people are saying we are a failed state. I'm afraid there are signals. If we were to identify water as a water security, and we have situations where rivers are polluted because there is effluent that is coming from wastewater treatment plants into our rivers, the communities downstream will suffer, because if we pollute here and downstream they must abstract and treat that water and back. So we see manholes overflowing with sewage on the streets, on the rivers, into the rivers, polluting our water bodies. That means something has collapsed. You look at the Green Drop report, the previous Green Drop report, it's showing You go news articles that you find. They will tell you the state of wastewater infrastructure in South Africa. So we're polluting our water resources, and it's going to get to a point where it's going to be very expensive for us to treat the water. And some of our water treatment systems are not designed to handle certain things. So we may end up not having good water quality. So, and people at some point might get tired to pay their rates and taxes if they're not getting the services. So that's the risk that we are failing as a country. We need water affairs to be very strong in terms of regulation and making sure that municipalities are accountable to treat water and the wastewater in the metros and municipalities.
And this is where this solution, where you talk about a privatization of certain infrastructure, bringing in finance from the private sector to come in and then to take over with the right skill sets. And that can be a potential solution, because I think what has happened is waiting on, as much as you say all good things about changing the competencies and so on, it's almost become a point where there's such disillusionment, where even I think national government has realized, if I throw money at the problem, it's actually going to get worse, because all that's going to happen is just a bottomless pit. They don't have the right competencies, there's corruption there, and all that will happen is that money will just get drained out of the fiscus. So you're right, you need to put an alternate structure in place that has got the right competencies, funded properly, and run like a proper business and deliver to the people. Is that a silver bullet, a something that can save this country with regards to this water crisis?
I think so. You know, if you can have a blended approach where private sector comes in, government has grants that they make available on annual basis, but they're not enough to cover the cost. Then we have this blended approach. And in the duration of the concession, let's say it's a 10-year concession, 15-year concession, there'll be skills transferred into the municipality. By the time a private sector is exiting that transaction, there is skills that has been developed. There is a culture of maintaining that particular, of looking after that asset. And when the private sector exit, they leave an asset that is working, so that is functional. They leave a team that is capable of looking after that asset going forward. And so I think that's a model that can work. And we do have successful stories in South Africa in terms of projects that have been done like that, in particular water. In fact, in other infrastructure classes, I mean, Gautrain was done on PPP, and some roads projects were done on PPP. Water projects were done on PPPs. There are successful stories that have been done in the country. And so it's working. So, but now I'm afraid the way things are happening, I think our government is not going to be able to cope.
So yeah, we've come to the end of this hour, where we have been interviewing Mpafane Deyi, shared his remarkable story, running around, herding the cattle in the mountains of the Eastern Cape. I just have this beautiful picture of that. And today, giving us solutions, practical solutions on how to solve this water crisis, which is staring us in the face, and it's a tsunami that's about to hit us. We're already starting to see some sort of signs of it in the metros. And Mpafane is very actively involved in this space. So if you want to get involved with Mpafane, you want to use his expertise, people want to understand a little bit more of the space, how do they get hold of you? Is there your company that they can get hold of, or are you on social media?
On social media, only on LinkedIn.
Okay, good.
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn.
Right, you can come onto the Inspirate business page as well, and we'll have Mpafane's Deyi's information
Details.
also at the bottom of the screen. You can get hold of you. And I think what the challenge, or for me, the opportunity, and what's come out strongly, because we'd like to get to very practical steps with everything that we speak about, is this whole municipal infrastructure, finance structure that you've created. And it's speaking to government and the initiative that it's doing in terms of attracting funding from the private sector. And I think this is something with the asset managers as well, that we can attract the funding into a vehicle of such. And I think therein lies a key opportunity. Also bringing in other skills. So those that are playing a role in terms of engineers and so on, I think connect with Mpafane as well. And we could create a whole movement of positive change around servicing our people. And I think that's the ultimate objective. So thank you so much for this. We could have gone on digging even deeper into this remarkable human being who has, in essence, taken a tough life and turned it into such light and opportunity, and continues to do so. So despite all our challenges, I think the principle that comes across very strongly for me is, despite our challenges, even as a country, there is always light at the end of the tunnel. And Mpafane personifies that light. On that note, we thank you for sharing this last hour with us. And we hope you as a viewer have been intrigued as much as I have, and hope to see you on many other shows. On that note, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.